What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my transfer tips for game week 11. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players that are being moved in and out of people's teams and discuss whether they are good moves or not. And I'll also quickly start off with an injury update about Gyökeres. So let's get into it. So I'm going to start with a quick update about Gyökeres because Arsenal have a Champions League game tonight. So Arteta had a press conference yesterday. He said he's definitely not available for the Champions League game. He didn't train today. We need to do some more tests and scans over the next few days to understand the extent of the injury. He went on to say, I am concerned because he hasn't had many muscular issues. He had to leave the pitch because he was feeling something, which is never a good sign for a player that's very explosive. We are digging to understand where we are in terms of injury. Now, to me, I'd be very surprised if he plays in game week 11. He's obviously not been ruled out, and we have to remember the press conference was on Monday after a game on Saturday. So it might just be a case that they haven't had a chance to do all the scans that they need to, but it doesn't sound great. It doesn't sound like the type of injury where they would risk him for Sunderland away if they can just play Merino up front or something like that. So obviously, just wait and see what Arteta says on Friday. But I would start making your plans for game week 11 as if Gyökeres is going to miss out. Will he be back after that, game week 12 onwards? Who knows yet? But I think he's probably going to miss that Sunderland game. And I think for most people, that's probably going to be a sell. We still don't know when Havertz is going to be back yet, by the way. So if Havertz was out like game weeks 12, 13 and 14, Gyökeres is still not a terrible longer-term pick. But I think a lot of us, and maybe it's just me, right? But I get the feeling from a lot of Gyökeres owners, you've kind of been waiting for the moment to sell him. Like, happy to hold him, but when the time is right, he goes. It's probably going to be game week 11. But obviously, we'll come back to this again on Friday once we hear what Arteta says ahead of that Sunderland game. So let's stick to Arsenal and talk about Declan Rice next, who's now up to 6.8 million. And by the way, he's the second highest scoring midfielder in FPL, only behind Semenyo. He's got 63 points, so he's 12 points behind. In fact, if you look at the midfield list, who would have predicted this at the start of the season? Semenyo at the top, then Rice, then Caicedo. So Rice and Caicedo make the top three. Then Mbeumo, then Njai. That's your top five. Salah is in 6th place. Then another Liverpool player is behind him in 7th. And you guessed it, of course, it's Gravenberch, because who else would it have been? And then Saka, who scored last night. Then Paulinho for Spurs. And then clinging on to the top 10 is Anthony from Burnley with 47 points, who was a bandwagon for a little while. No one's really talked about him recently, but he's still right up there. And it's quite funny because at the moment I'm talking about shifting a lot of my money into midfield because there's all these great picks. Most of the players I'm looking at are not in that top 10. So it has been a weird season so far. There's a lot of what you would consider defensive contribution players there, but a lot of the reason they're there is because of the attacking returns they've got so far. So if we look at Rice, I think he's a bit different to a Caicedo, for example. So he's not quite as good for defensive contributions. Per start this season, he's got 9. And you need 12 as a midfielder to hit the +2 points. So he is going to get it quite often, but not as often as your Caicedos. But he's more attacking. So 0.12 expected goals per 90, 0.24 expected assists is not bad. And with Arsenal, you get a lot of clean sheets as well. Now, I know it's only 1 point for a midfielder, but it all adds up with the amount that Arsenal get. So if Declan Rice gets defensive contributions, that's a 5-pointer without any attacking returns because of the 1 point for the clean sheet as well. So I quite like him at 6.8 million, but I do think it's a similar conversation to what I had with Caicedo yesterday. Part of the reason he's so popular is because he's probably overperformed a little bit on his attacking returns. Like his XG per 90 is 0.12, his goals per 90 is 0.22. Now, it's not a massive overperformance, but on the assists, he's almost doubled it. So I know the argument is that he's taking half the set pieces, right? He takes them from one side on corners, Saka takes from the other. They're so good from corners, he's going to get a ton of assists. But then Arsenal are very good at set pieces, right? Like best in the league, and they will score a lot of goals from them, and that will probably continue. But I'm not convinced it's going to stay at this rate. And I'm going to have that same conversation about Gabriel later on. So Rice is going to tick over with points. I'm just not, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Like I'm wrong about a lot of stuff. I'm still not completely convinced he's better at 6.8 million than like a Sarr at Crystal Palace, who doesn't have defensive contributions, but does have better attacking numbers. So I think Rice, like Caicedo, is popular now because he's done a lot of points recently. I'm not convinced that level of points is completely sustainable. He's still going to tick over, of course. He will chip in with the odd assist, the odd goal. He will get some defensive contributions as well. But if you look at his recent games, we're looking at 13, 7, 3, 11, 9. But I would just expect that to come down. Like you look at the games before, 3, 1, 4, 6, 6. No one was waxing lyrical about Declan Rice when he was getting those scores. Now, to be fair, as a caveat to that, the games were a little bit more difficult. They've been easier recently, and the games they've got coming up are still pretty good. So maybe he can do what he's done, but I think the likelihood is that the level of points he's getting comes down a bit. And so I put a tweet out yesterday saying, you know, I'm looking at all these midfielders. Who is Declan Rice better than? It was like in Jai, Sa, Enzo, Szoboszlai, etc. I'm not sure if he's better than... He's definitely not better than all of them. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. And if you feel like you've got to have 3 Arsenal, you don't, right? It's Rice versus the other midfielders at the same price. And if you haven't got Sa, I think he might be better. If you haven't got Enzo Fernandez, it's Wolves at home, then Burnley away. Like the attacking potential there, he's on penalties as well. Like Declan Rice is at, let's just go to points per game. He's on 6.3. Like, I just... That's never going to continue. And by the way, that doesn't make him a bad pick. I feel like sometimes because I don't fancy a pick for FPL, people think I think they're terrible or I hate them. Absolutely. I love Declan Rice as a player. I'm looking forward to him winning the World Cup for England next summer. And I think he's a good pick. I just think the way he's being talked about right now is if, you know, he's the Arsenal attacker to get. Like people thinking that he's going to continue getting more attacking returns than like a Saka. And there's a price difference, right? So I'm not even getting into it from a value perspective. But people are talking about it like Declan Rice is the best attacker for Arsenal. That just won't continue. So yeah, good pick. I think a little bit overrated because of the points he's done. But honestly, yeah, 6 points. If you want to buy him, I don't have anything against him, despite what I've just said, because the fixtures are pretty good coming up for Arsenal. They will get a bunch of clean sheets. He will get the odd attack and return, the odd DEFCON. I just don't think it will be to the same level he's had recently. I think that's the main reason people are buying him. So Cherki started for Man City at the weekend, got 2 assists against Bournemouth and looked really good. You can see how that link with Haaland is going to shape up nicely for Man City over the coming weeks. And really, that's the first time I've properly seen him play. Because the only other start he had in the Premier League was against Spurs in Game Week 2. And I didn't get to watch that game. I didn't really watch much of the Club World Cup either. And he's good. And I watched him thinking this is going to be a really fun player to see in the Premier League. But I also thought there is no chance I'm buying him for FPL. And I've already seen some questions start to come in. Should we consider him maybe from Game Week 13? He's only 6.3 million. There is zero chance you will see me buy Cherki over the next few weeks. I'm more likely to buy Caicedo. Put it that way. I would definitely buy Declan Rice over Cherki. No question about it. And you know what I'm going to say? I almost don't need to say it. The minutes won't be there. Is he going to start every single game for Man City? Absolutely not. They've got Champions League, they've got midweek game in Game Week 14, which every Premier League team does, by the way. But we know for Man City, the rotation potential is always there. And to me, it's just not worth the headache. And honestly, I think these days, the way that FPL price players is mostly quite kind across the board. So in the past, you might have gone for a Man City player that you weren't quite sure about the minutes because they were so nicely priced versus other players. That's not the case now. I can list off so many players between 6 and 7 million that are pretty much guaranteed to start every game. And in some cases, they've got penalties as well, like in Jai or Enzo right now, or Szoboszlai from Game Week 12, who's played 90 minutes every game. Cherki has to be so much better than them to risk the minutes. Like even in this game against Bournemouth, and I know he's had injuries and stuff this season, he only played just over 60 minutes. So he's not going to play full 90s. And he's not going to start every game. Just do not do it to yourself, please. Even when we get to Game Week 13 against Leeds, suddenly you're going to get to Game Week 14, you're going to check the team sheet, is he on it? And if he is, then you're going to be worried about Sunderland at home in Game Week 15. He's just not that good of an FPL pick to warrant that headache. So let's go back to Arsenal and talk about Bukayo Saka next. 10.1 million, 2 goals, 1 penalty, 1 non-penalty, and 0 assists all season. He's not really delivering on that price point as it stands. I think Saka's a really interesting FPL player to talk about right now because this level of returns has been happening for a little while. When he came back from injury last year, he didn't really do much towards the end of the season. Now, maybe you put that down to the injury, and he has had a small injury this year as well, but I think we expect more, right? For 10.1 million. Now, to be fair, if you go back and look at last season, he only started 20 times for Arsenal and he still walked away with 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 returns in total. So we know there's a really good player there. We just haven't seen it for a while. And even this season, 0.15 expected goals per 90, it's not that high in terms of open play goal threat. Now, he did have 2 really good chances against Burnley, one-on-ones. If he scores even one of them, we're probably not having this conversation. If he scores twice, no one's thinking about him whatsoever. So, yeah, it's an interesting, because I think people that have got him, at least the people I've seen that have got him, they're thinking about when they might sell him. And then those of us that don't have him, especially if we got Gyökeres, are thinking about buying him. And the fixtures are there, by the way. Sunderland away is fine. Then it's Spurs at home in 12. Chelsea away a little bit tougher, but some people might free hit then. And even if you got to 13 and you had Saka, you would just play him. It's not a problem. He is first choice penalty taker as well. Brentford at home 14, Villa away 15, Wolves at home 16. So the fixture run is good. And by the way, he offers an alternative to Haaland captain as well, if you want to go against Haaland. Haaland's got away games in 12, 14 and 16. I think it's Newcastle away, Fulham away and Palace away. Whereas Saka's got Spurs at home, Brentford at home, Wolves at home. By the way, Salah has also got good games in those weeks, 12, 14 and 16. I think it's Forest at home, Sunderland at home, Brighton at home. So if you want to go against Haaland, 12, 14, 16 is probably what you should look at. But are people actually going to captain Saka? That's what's playing on my mind as a non-owner. Will I actually want to captain him? I don't know. Anyway, right, if you've got him, I wouldn't sell. Put it that way. Unless you're absolutely desperate for the money, I cannot see a good reason to sell him this week, because Sunderland away is not bad. And just using a transfer on him before the break just doesn't feel great. Again, not that you have to have transfers stacked up after an international break, but you want to have a good reason to use them before. And selling Saka to me is not a good reason. So you keep him with Sunderland away. You maybe even want to captain him this week if you want to go against Haaland. And then you get back to game week 12, really good fixture against Spurs at home. So if I had him, I almost certainly would not sell him. In terms of buying him, I think it's one of those situations where it's fine to do. But if you want to go against him, I think that's also perfectly reasonable if you want to spread that money around instead. Especially if you don't think you're going to captain him. That's kind of even less reason to own him. Because after the break, Madueke presumably will be back soon. If it's not in 12, maybe 13, maybe 14. But at some point, he's going to be back. That's going to impact Saka's minutes a little bit. We know Saka's first choice. He's going to start pretty much every game. But early subs could happen. So that's why I don't see him as like essential that you have to buy him. But what's playing on my mind is the captaincy. Because I'm almost certainly not going to buy Salah. And I suspect a lot of people are in the same boat. But I might want to go against Haaland the odd time, especially in those away games. Saka might be the next best option. Like, Bruno Fernandes also has good home. It's a weird one where Saka, Salah and Bruno pretty much all have good home games in 12, 14 and 16. For Bruno, or in Mbeumo, I guess, it's Everton at home 12, West Ham at home 14, and Bournemouth at home in 16 is a bit tougher for Man United, but still an option. So, am I really going to captain Bruno over Saka? I'm not convinced by that. So maybe I just go for Haaland the whole way through. Yeah, he's not delivering, but we know he can. It's just the minutes from Madueke. Like, will it be good enough afterwards? I don't know. There's this. I still think if I was wildcarding this week, my favourite 3 Arsenal would be Gabriel, Saka plus one other defender. But as a non-owner of Saka, I don't feel it's essential that I buy him if I sell Gyökeres. So if you've got him, I definitely wouldn't sell. And I think he's perfectly reasonable to buy, but I don't see him as an essential pick or anything like that. Brian Mbeumo is another really interesting player to talk about in FPL right now. He went up in price last night to 8.4 million. So he's right in the middle of Cunha and Fernandes now. He's 0.5 million more expensive than Cunha, and he's 0.5 million cheaper than Bruno. And we'll come on to the other two in just a second. In general, with Mbeumo, in his own right, I just think he's a really good pick right now. You could definitely make the argument that there's better value midfielders like Rice, Sarr, Enzo Fernandez, Njai. Njai, by the way, came off early last night, but David Moyes after the game said it's probably just cramped. So he should be fine for the weekend, but we'll hear again from Moyes on Friday. Either way, definitely an argument that there's better value midfielders. But if you're asking me, will Mbeumo continue scoring plenty of FPL points? I think the answer has to be yes. His starting place in that Man United team is basically under no threat whatsoever. He pretty much always plays 90 minutes. He's running about 0.6 expected goal involvement per 90. Half of that is goal threat. They are really good numbers. There's no Europe for Man United, so there's nothing to rest players for. Even when we get to game week 14, which is a midweek game, Man United haven't had many of them this season. Players like Mbeumo, Fernandes, etc., they're going to be fresh. So he's going to play 13, he's going to play 14, he's going to play 15. Yes, he's going to go to African Cup of Nations in game week 17. You've got 6 matches before then. So is Mbeumo, if the question is Mbeumo a good pick? The answer is yes. And I don't think there's any argument about that. Are there better value? Potentially, but Mbeumo is just a good pick. The more interesting discussion, really, if you've got no Man United midfielders and you want to buy one, is Mbeumo the one to get? Because Bruno Fernandes' numbers are also not that bad, considering the position he's playing, and he's on penalties, and he doesn't go to African Cup of Nations, and he's only 0.5 million more. And yes, AFCON is, not until game week 17, but by getting in Fernandes now, you just leave him in the whole way through. And by the way, I think because of the number of players that will go to AFCON and the number of midfielders we'll be left with, whether you want a Man United midfielder or not now, I suspect you might want one later on. Because when AFCON happens, it's Villa away, Newcastle at home, Wolves at home, which is great, Leeds away and Burnley away. Bearing in mind, when you buy Man United attackers mostly, especially like Bruno, you know they're going to play every game over Christmas. There's no issues there at all. And the fixtures are quite good. So if you want a long-term pick, I just think because it's only a 0.5 million gap now, I would buy Bruno. And I know the arguments about Mbeumo being better from open play, etc., but he's not that far ahead of Bruno in terms of points. And this is a guy that's missed 2 penalties as well. So I really like Mbeumo. I might buy him this week, but I'm buying him as well as Bruno. I think if I was buying fresh and I had the money, I would go Fernandes. Could you make the same argument to save 0.5 million and go Cunha? I think that's a little bit trickier, just because 1, Mbeumo's numbers so far this season are better, and 2, his minutes are more secure. I think Cunha will be popular around game week 17, because at that point, there's no Mbeumo to play number 10, so Cunha will just be nailed, and the fixtures are good over Christmas, and he'll play lots of minutes. And he has played lots of minutes recently, 90, 81, 90. My main concern is, he got benched against Sunderland, and that's because you can have a Šeško number 9, Mount and Mbeumo 10 set up with no Cunha. Now, I don't expect that to happen that often, but part of the reason he's played recently is because Mount's had injury problems. He was on the bench against Forest and he didn't come on. So I wonder if he's just being managed. Now, it could just be that Cunha's now playing more how Amorim wants him to, and he's a bigger goal threat than Mount is. I think for me, I think Cunha is definitely on my mind. But I just think with Cunha, I'd be checking the team sheet every week. I don't think I'd be fully comfortable. I wouldn't be checking it for Mbeumo. And that's what slightly worries me about him. But if you want to go slightly different from Man United, 7.9 million is the cheapest one. And he will play once Mbeumo goes to AFCON. So you just got to hope that he plays before that. So Man United, look, there's no rush. It Spurs away this week. But the fixtures generally are quite good for quite a while for Man United. And you know they're going to play because they're not in Europe. I spoke about Sara and Enzo, but they are good value, but they are playing European matches as well. You don't have that problem with United players. So Mbeumo's good, but I would definitely buy Bruno, I think, for 0.5 million more. And Cunha, I am going to think about it this week for my own team, but I suspect I'll just make the decision. If I want another Man United midfielder, it will be Mbeumo. And I think from an attacking point of view, United have done okay this year. So I want to talk about Gabriel from Arsenal, who's now up to 41% overall ownership and has a price tag of 6.6 million, which is kind of crazy. And the reason I want to talk about him is almost like a bit of a therapy session for people that don't own him. Because I know if you don't own him, you're probably feeling pretty bad right now. And you're probably in a position where you feel like you're getting punished every week. So you've got to get him in no matter what it takes. Whether that's -4, -8, you've just got to get him in as soon as possible to stop the punishment. I'll say this, he's obviously one of the best FPL picks right now and probably the best pick from Arsenal. So if you can get him in a nice simple way that doesn't majorly affect the rest of your team, doesn't take a hit, then I would probably just do it. But I will say this to remain consistent, because I think sometimes when I speak about players like Caicedo or Declan Rice and I say things like, I'm not sure what they're doing right now is sustainable, the attacking returns are going to come down, I think people just assume I'm a non-owner that's bitter. It's the same thing with Gabriel, who I have in my team since game week 7. The level of returns he's getting right now are probably not all that sustainable. Yes, he is a massive threat from set pieces for Arsenal, maybe the main threat, or it pretty much is the main threat, right? And Arsenal are very good at set pieces, but he's still got 3 attacking returns in the last 5 games. I bet he doesn't have 3 in the next 5. And yes, he's doing really well for defensive contributions, but he's not going to pick it up every single game. So he is great, and if you can get him in nice and simple, I would probably do it. But let's say you're sat there with Calafiori or Timber instead, and 1 free transfer, and you've got the money in the bank, so it wouldn't even take a hit. Yes, that's a reasonable move, right? And if Gabriel does really well again this week, he'll probably rise in price over the international break. So I don't hate that move. But if you're sat there thinking, I'd rather roll, I think that's okay to do. You can always pick Gabriel up in game week 12 instead, especially if you've got a bit of money in the bank. Because anything can happen in game week 11 or over the break where those 2 free transfers you would have going into game week 12 might be better used. Like, let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that people were talking about how essential Timber was and how good he was been, how attacking he can be. There's every chance that Timber outscores Gabriel this week. Like, I still think Gabriel's the best pick, so on average over the next 8-10 weeks, I would expect Gabriel to do better. But in one game week, a shootout between the two, of course Timber could do really well. So again, I'm not trying to make people feel so better like you don't have to get him. If you can get him, you probably should. But I wouldn't be taking loads of hits for him. And Timber or Calafiori are fine to sell to Gabriel, but I think it's also okay to roll. Just don't hate me if he scores against Sunderland, because I wouldn't put it past him. I just think you look at the recent scores. Of course he's capable of this, but he is on a run of 12-9, 12-9, 13. And by the way, I said this last week and he got another 12-pointer against Burnley, so that could happen again. But the returns will come down a little bit. All right, he's not always going to get defcons and attacking returns in the same game. But I will say overall, if you can get him, you just should. Because we knew Arsenal defence would be the best this year, or there was a high likelihood of that. They are the best, but they've also almost gone up a level. And we knew Gabriel would have goal threat. I don't think that's really changed that much, but we didn't know he'd have the defcons. That's the thing that has also really done or really gone in his favour this year. 9.1 per start. You only need 10 as a defender. So he's amazing. Obviously, you're not selling him. You should definitely buy him if you can. But I do think if you're sat there and you want to just roll and you've got an Arsenal defender in place, that is kind of fine. Speaking of defenders, Reece James has now put up 6 back-to-back, not just starts, but 90-minute games in the Premier League. So the last 6 game weeks, he started every single one and played 90 in each of them. Has he finally got over those fitness issues that have plagued him for so long? Potentially. And Maresca did say a few weeks ago when he was talking about Fofana that they need to manage him and get him to the same point that Reece James is now at. So Maresca has got the confidence in Reece James's fitness. Maybe we should as well, from an FPL point of view. So there's 2 conversations to have here. 1, should you be looking at a Chelsea defender in general? And 2, is Reece James the one to go for? In terms of Chelsea defence, I think next 2 look really good. Wolves at home, Burnley away. I know Wolves are going to have a new manager. I don't think it's going to make any difference. Generally, I would see Chelsea as probably like a top 5 defence in the league. At least I believe that's where they'll probably be by the end of the season. So Wolves at home, new manager, doesn't matter. It's a good fixture. Burnley away, also really good. After that, not so sure. Arsenal at home's not great. Now, you will have a free hit to use, if you've still got it left. Some of you might go in game week 13. But even if you did that and you dodged the Arsenal game, which not everyone will be able to do, Leeds is okay, but it's away. Bournemouth away is not great, and it is away as well. Everton at home in 16 is okay. But then in 17, it's another away game against Newcastle. So if you look at the longer-term fixture run, Arsenal, away game to Leeds, away game to Bournemouth, Everton, Newcastle away. I just don't particularly like it. And also, with Chelsea, I think there's always, despite the 6 back-to-back 90 games, there's always slight concern over the minutes for me. I just think there could be some rotation, especially with midweek games. So they've almost got to be much better than the competition to warrant going there. And I just don't think long-term they are. If you're on a wildcard 13 strategy, by all means, Wolves at home, Burnley away, if you need a new defender, go and buy Reece James. And then just wildcard in 13, maybe without any Chelsea defenders. But for people thinking longer term, I'm just not sure I would go there. I'm pretty confident if I wildcarded in game week 13, if I still had that chip left, I wouldn't have any Chelsea defenders. So to buy them now as long-term picks, I'm just not that confident. That game week 14 fixture is midweek. And again, Reece James, 6 back-to-back 90s. Maybe I'm overplaying the concerns, but it's Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday turnaround. So there's going to be rotation. It's probably going to be a bit in that Leeds game. So could you see like James or someone else rotated? Possibly. For me, the fixtures are just not good enough long-term to go there. If you want to go there or you're going short-term, I think for the next 2 weeks, I'd probably go Reece James. He's taken over a lot of set pieces. His attacking numbers look good. I'd risk it. If you want to be absolutely confident in the minutes, I'd probably go Chalobah instead in terms of fitness as well. Like long-term pick, but short-term, I'd go James. So that's how I feel. Long-term, I probably wouldn't go there. If you're going to do that, I would go Chalobah. Short-term, I would go James. Because Wolves at home, Burnley away just looks so good. Let's talk about Thiago at Brentford, 6.2 million. Some of you might be looking for a new forward this week that's not Haaland, not Mateta, or maybe someone a bit cheaper. Is he the one to go for? I think generally, he's a pretty good pick. I think anyone that's under 6.5 million playing regular minutes on penalties is always going to be good value, especially when they're playing number 9. So from that point of view, he is just going to be a good pick, especially long term. The only slight hesitancy I would have is the upcoming fixtures. Like Newcastle at home this week probably doesn't look quite so bad after they've lost 3-1 to West Ham, but it's still not an amazing fixture. Then it's an away game against Brighton. Burnley at home in 13 is obviously great. Then it's Arsenal away, which is horrible. And then it's Spurs away in 15. Again, not terrible, but it is an away game. So next 5 overall, 3 away, Brighton, Arsenal, Spurs, and one of the home games is Newcastle. So it's not the kind of fixture run that you would target. But if you want someone in cheap that you're going to just keep long term, I obviously don't hate that pick. And if you bring him in and have to play him against Newcastle, it's not the end of the world. If you have to play him against Brighton away, it's not the end of the world. I would maybe question whether he's a really good second forward. Like if you've got Haaland and Thiago versus Haaland and Mateta, I don't necessarily like that. But I also don't hate it because it saves a lot of money. Gives you even more cash to put in your defence and midfield. So I think I have to say he's just a good pick. I will say, if you're someone that's looking to bench boost in game week 12, you could maybe look at Welbeck instead, who's got Brentford at home, rather than having Brighton away. And to be honest, I think Brighton's fixtures are just better overall over the next kind of 5 or 6 weeks. Now, this week, they are away to Palace, which is probably not as good as Newcastle at home. But next 4 or 5, Welbeck's probably the one. There's just something about Welbeck. I just think with Brighton, like he's playing really well. So the question is, why would he come out of the team? He probably won't, but he still could. I think with Brentford, there's no chance Thiago doesn't play number 9. At Brighton, there's a small chance. And also with Brighton, there's a chance that Welbeck's injured and you don't hear about it. Whereas with Brentford, I think we probably would hear about it. So I think long term, like 8-10 weeks pick, I'm definitely going Thiago over Welbeck. Short term, I think Welbeck might be better, especially if you want to bench boost game week 12. If bench boost is already done, you probably just save the money and get Thiago. The other conversation is, just quickly, let's say this is your third forward. Do you go Thiago 3-4-3 and kind of dead spot your midfielder, like pick up a 4.3 non-player midfielder? Or do you go for like Minte or Caicedo or someone like that and go Guiu up front? Like that's something to consider as well. And actually, when you put it like that, it's hard to argue that Minte is better than Thiago, right? Like close to 90 minutes most games on penalties. Is that better than Minte? Possibly, but then Minte's fixtures are better. And Guiu's cheap as well. He's 4.2. He's cheaper than any of the... I think the cheapest midfielder is 4.3. I think if they all keep playing, I think Thiago as a third forward versus a fifth midfielder around the same price, you could argue Thiago's better. The thing that's always in the back of my mind, there's not as many good forwards as there are midfielders, in my opinion. And so if Thiago becomes a problem, it's then 2 chances to fix that because you probably want to move it into midfield, unless another player becomes an option. Like if Welbeck's still smashing it, maybe you go him. I just think if Minte gets injured, I'm probably going to find the cash quite easy to go up to one of the many 6.5 million midfielders. With Thiago, that's not the case. It's like Thiago and Welbeck, that's it, under 7 million. So I don't know. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I think he's a good pick. I really do think he is. But there is part of me that probably prefers the 3-5-2 setup rather than 3-4-3 right now. But that's just personal preference. I cannot say that Thiago is a bad pick. If you want to get him, you absolutely should. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'll be back tomorrow with a game week preview. I'll see you then.